As the DS brand points out, beyond the motor industry, 3 of the world's top 5 luxury brands are French. Why shouldn't Gallic style be equally desirable when it comes to cars? Perhaps it can be with this one, the DS7, here usefully improved. This upper mid-sized crossover was the first of the company's very own designs, and it's still appealing to the right kind of customer.
If you want a premium mid-sized SUV in the current market, you're not short of choice. But there's nothing quite like this. The DS7, it's been on sale since 2018, is favoured transport for the French president, and in late 2022 was significantly revised to create the car we're looking at here. We wouldn't blame you for still being somewhat unfamiliar with the DS brand. Used on upmarket Citroëns in the 1950s, it was a nameplate reintroduced by that marque in 2010, before being announced as a standalone brand in 2014. For most of the next 4 years, DS models were little more than rebadged Citroëns. This one, though, was the company's first purpose-designed contender, initially known as the DS7 Crossback. Then, as part of this 2022 facelift, rechristened merely DS7. As part of this update, there are smarter looks embellished with clever front lighting, a new infotainment system, and a refocusing of the range around E-Tense PHEV power, which includes the introduction of a top 4x4 360 DS performance version. As before, under the skin lies much that's shared with mid-sized Peugeots and Citroëns, but it's all been covered with a thick sheen of Gallic gloss that could represent a refreshing alternative to the Teutonic ambience that tends to dominate amongst premium mid-sized SUV models of this sort. The DS people have been quite clever about this crossover's sizing too, using the usual Stellantis Group EMP2 platform, but stretching it so as to give this car most of the interior space you'd find in a D-segment premium SUV. Think Audi Q5 or BMW X3, but at a price closer to that you pay for a C-segment premium SUV contender, such as an Audi Q3 or a BMW X1. There remain a few signs of classic DS innovation as well. Given the marque's heritage in pioneering suspension technology, it's appropriate that the highlight is a camera-driven active damping system that claims to set new standards in this sector, recognising bumps and road undulations before you even reach them. Features like intelligent pixel vision headlights and a DS connected pilot package that gives you level 2 autonomous driving may be more familiar to buyers looking at the latest models of this kind, but this DS7 aims to set itself apart with a uniquely sumptuous tactile interior. The idea is to bring a bit of Louis Vuitton and Chanel to the mid-sized premium segment. Like the sound of that? Well, to find out more, you'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. Nothing major's gone on in terms of changing the dynamic engineering on offer here. The DS7 rides on an older version of the Stellantis Group EMP2 platform, so there can't ever be a full EV version of it. So the marque instead has concentrated on broadening the E-Tense branded plug-in hybrid power plant lineup, relinquishing all the other previous conventional unelectrified units, save for an ill-promoted 1.5 litre blue HDI 130 horsepower diesel, which at the time of this test in early summer 2023 still, perhaps temporarily, languishing at the bottom of the range. Whatever your choice beneath the bonnet, there's a slightly confusing visual vibe of sportiness and luxury here that's carried through to the on-road experience of this improved DS7 model, just as it was on the original Crossback badged version of this design. The whole Parisian savoir-faire vibe leads you to expect a more wallowy response than you actually get the first time you turn into a corner at any kind of speed. And amongst the changes made to this updated range is the addition of a top E-Tense 360 4x4 model developed by the DS Performance division that's been dominating the Formula E World Championship in recent years. Ultimately, though, a DS should be a car that lowers the heartbeat rather than raises it, wafting over uneven surfaces with typical Gallic nonchalance. Which is why, back at the original launch of this model in 2018, we were surprised to find that of all the things that had been borrowed from partner brand Citroën to create this car, that Citroën Marque's clever progressive hydraulic cushion suspension system wasn't one of them. On a C4 or a C5 Aircross, this setup replaces the usual suspension bump stops with hydraulic dampers, which cushion impacts over things like speed humps and tarmac tears and allow the fitment of softer springs and dampers. That's just the sort of thing that would be perfect for a model with DS branding. Ride quality was, after all, the standout attribute of the original DS model, created by Italian sculptor Flaminio Bertoni and French aeronautical engineer André Lefebvre back in 1955. Its hydro-pneumatic suspension system, activated through a complicated system of gas spheres, quite simply transformed people's expectations of the way that a luxurious car could ride over bumpy roads. Mercedes were among a number of prestigious brands that subsequently copied this design, so it was perhaps appropriate that at the original launch of this DS7 model back in 2018, today's DS engineers returned the compliment by developing for the priciest versions of this car their own version of the camera-driven active suspension system that we first saw back in 2013 on the 6th generation Mercedes S-Class. Even today, this kind of setup is still virtually unknown on more affordable models, and its democratization and integration into this Gallic mid-sized crossover was a welcome development that we expected competitors to quickly copy. On paper, after all, it looks like a very good idea. What the French manufacturer calls its DS Active Scan setup is based around a forward-facing windscreen-mounted camera that, at speeds of over 15 miles an hour, scans the topography of the road for up to 25 metres ahead as you drive. Bumps and potholes are identified before you get to them, and the dampers adjusted accordingly, with initial softening that reduces the abruptness of the car's initial contact with the undulation, then subsequent stiffening that controls the body pitching that you'd normally get. The result ought to be an air suspension-like magic carpet ride, but we didn't notice that when we tried the system back in 2018, and it doesn't appear to have been much improved here. Tarmac tears, road surface undulations and potholes seem to bother the car far more than the advanced technology suggests they should, though it copes a little better with low-speed obstacles like speed bumps, over which this DS7 cruises with silken ease. It's worth pointing out that Active Scan can't be had with the base and mid-level trim versions of this DS7 that most customers will choose. And even if your chosen model does have it, as here, a little annoyingly, it only works when you switch into the comfort driving mode that's provided as an integral part of this active suspension package. It's a pity Active Scan doesn't work in the alternative sport setting, because it would give this French contender an extra sure-footedness through fast secondary road corners that it currently lacks. Still, that's not the kind of driving this car responds particularly well to, and the sport modes added dubious benefits of speaker-generated engine noise and an oversensitive throttle pedal that don't really suit the kind of car this is. It's at its best when you're wafting along and enjoying this French car's more relaxed approach to life as the mandatory 8-speed EAT8 automatic transmission slurs its way smoothly through its various ratios. You can't ever set it to stick in the gear you want, but if haste really is required, it can get with the program and play its part in propelling your DS7 along at a decent lick. Interestingly, all the engines on offer across the range develop 300 Nm of torque, though of course the E10's plug-in hybrid variants embellish that with a slug of electric motor power. Without that, performance in the base 1.5 litre Blue HDI 130 horsepower diesel is somewhat leisurely, 62 miles an hour from rest, taking 10.7 seconds en route to 121. These days though, DS is about as interested in selling you a diesel as McDonald's is in selling you a salad. So it's far more likely that you'll be pointed to one of the E-Tense plug-in hybrid models. Previously, in the crossback era, you had to have a PHEV powered DS7 in pretty much the form we're trying it here. This E-Tense 4x4 300 model sees a 200 horsepower, 1.6 litre petrol engine mated to a couple of 80 kilowatt motors, which boost total output to 296 horsepower, with one motor sitting on each axle to provide what in theory is four-wheel drive capability. The only thing the facelift package has changed with this confection is the addition of a larger PHEV system battery, increased in size from 13 kilowatt hours to 14.2, though only 12.9 kilowatt hours of that is actually usable. That's enhanced potential EV driving range from 37 to 42 miles, a helpful improvement, but still a somewhat unexceptional reading in an era where the most advanced mid-sized PHEV crossovers are now travelling 55 to 60 miles between charges. You might hope that introducing an extra, more affordable DS7 E-Tense model without the weight of a rear axle motor would usefully improve this EV range showing. But no, the E-Tense 225 only improves that reading fractionally to 43 miles. And with the drop in total output to 225 horsepower, performance takes a big hit. The 62 mile an hour sprint figure down from 5.9 to 8.9 seconds, and less significantly, top speed down from 146 to 140 miles an hour. If issues of range are less significant, and in the unlikely event that you're prepared to blow really rather a lot of money on your DS7, you'll be one of the few directed to the top DS Performance Division developed E-Tense 360 4x4 models we mentioned earlier. The mechanical formula with that range topper isn't much different to that of this E-Tense 4x4 300 variant, save for software tweaks that boost total output to 355 horsepower. Somewhat pointlessly, as it happens, because the torque figure and top speed are just the same, and the 62 mile an hour sprint reading at 5.6 seconds is just 0.3 of a second faster. DS argues that the difference lies in the handling detail with the 360 version, a chassis 15mm lower, wider front and rear tracks, and bigger 380mm diameter brake discs. But ultimately, you can't help wondering what the point of the whole DS performance-inspired exercise really is. All DS7 E-Tense models get selectable sport, hybrid and electric drive modes. With the diesel model, these are replaced by more familiar normal, eco and sport settings. If you've gone the E-Tense route, a button on the gear lever allows you to increase brake regeneration energy harvesting back to the battery. And there are selectable E-Save and Max E-Save options on the centre screen that allow somewhat inefficient forced battery charging by the engine as you drive. The two pricier all-wheel drive E-Tense models also get an extra four-wheel drive mode, which might come in useful in a snowy snap, but because of the modest ground clearance, shouldn't tempt you into any sort of significant departure from a paved surface. Rather more relevant to likely DS7 customers is the drive assist technology this car can offer. This update has brought the car further, reaching DS Pixel LED Vision 3 headlamps, with a range of up to 380 metres. And as before, there's the option of adding the DS Drive Assist system, which delivers so-called Level 2 autonomous driving. That comes courtesy of adaptive cruise control and a lane-keeping assist package that's intended for use in traffic jams and on motorways, and can virtually allow the car to drive itself at speeds of up to 112 miles an hour. You'll also like the DS Night Vision full LED headlights that produce a sweeping beam adaptable to road conditions and vehicle speed via 5 fully automated modes: parking, town beam, country beam, motorway beam and adverse weather. This car can also automatically park itself and use an optional DS Night Vision system to alert you to people and animals who might be about to step into your path in the dark. Technology and drive assist luxury then, which ultimately is what every DS model ought really to be about. You You don't expect a mere facelift to hugely change a car's character, but this one's actually quite far-reaching. The original DS7 Crossback, inspired by the avant-garde DS Divine concept car of 2014, was always a good looker, and it still is. As before, at first glance, you might think it a bigger car than it actually is, a competitor to upper mid-sized SUVs rather than compact ones, or, if it makes more sense, an X3 rival rather than an X1 competitor. Actually, the dimensions, like the pricing, pitch this model somewhere in between these two segments. Very little has changed visually with this design from a profile perspective. As before, the 4,593mm body length figure is similar to something like a Land Rover Discovery Sport, but the silhouette's a great deal more interesting than one of those. There's a mid-level crease that flows just below the glasshouse, losing itself in the back door before reappearing to emphasise the rear haunches. Further down, a lower swage line gives the flanks some shape and separates arches housing stylised wheels, which will usually be 19 inches in size, though 21-inch rims are available at the very top of the lineup. Roof rails appear on most models. Time, though, to get to the aesthetic changes made here, most of which are evident here at the front. Rather disappointingly, the original Crossback model's innovative DS Active Vision LED headlamps, which, in a nod to the original 50s DS model's clever swivelling front lights, did a little purple-lit dance when the car was unlocked, are no more. Instead, a slimmer, more conventional pair of DS Pixel LED Vision 3 headlamps replace them. But what lies below makes up for it: the so-called DS Light Veil, an eye-catching panel of 4 vertical daytime running light strips made up of 33 LEDs and apparently influenced by the look of the brand's XE Tense and Aero Sport Lounge concept cars. Almost as noticeable is the fact that the grille's much bigger, as are the DS wings that flow out of the top corners of it, spearing into the headlamps. As before, though, possibly our favourite perspective with this car is the one that's usually most forgettable when it comes to SUVs of this kind: the rear. The wraparound tailgate is embellished with what the brand likes to call hypnotic rear lights, now even slimmer than before, made up of narrow 3D strips with scrolling indicators, each lamp a full LED made up of illuminated scales. Other changes include extra body creases for a wider look, and the previous Crossback lettering between the tail lamps makes way for DS Automobile script. It's all rather over-badged, actually, because as well as that, there's a central DS badge, a DS7 moniker, and E-Tense referencing for this plug-in model too, all of it in different sizes and fonts. Apart from that, though, this remains a sleek, flowing tailgate design, spoiled a little by the clunky rear screen wiper, but topped off nicely by this neat upper roof spoiler. As for the stuff you can't see, well, under the skin sits a stretched version of the EMP2 platform, also used by the Peugeot 3008 SUV, that flows down the same French Moulins production line. As before with this car, though, the brand has saved its boldest flourishes for the interior, so let's take a look. If you like Teutonic simplicity and clarity of form, look away now. What's served up here continues to be a glorious antidote to all that, a celebration, the DS designers hope, of everything that's cutting edge in French fashion. So, angled switches cascade along the centre console. The chromed corner vents are pyramidal with a studded jewelled finish, and Alcantara, open pore wood inlays and leather feature in quantities appropriate to the Parisian-themed trim package you've chosen. Rather nauseously, the DS people call these inspirations. The most affordable performance line variants have an Alcantara-trimmed cabin theme, which not everyone likes. One writer likened the feel to entering a branch of carpet ride. Further up the range, it's all based around various kinds of luscious leather. Not much about the cabin design has changed as part of this facelift. The key difference lies with a leap in technology for this central screen. Still 12 inches in size, but now a beneficiary of the DS Iris system, basically the brand's interpretation of the latest Stellantis Group media software we've seen on all the most recent Peugeots and Citroëns. That means a menu made up of widgets for accessing all the infotainment functions with a single movement. For controlling the 3D connected navigation, the ventilation, the digital audio sources and journey information. Over-the-air updates now come included, as does a useful energy section for the E-Tense models and a 14-speaker 515-watt Focal premium audio system if you avoid the two performance line variants. The Iris screens menus aren't quite as DS themed as before, but once you figure them all out, which isn't immediately obvious, you should find them slightly easier to use and the functions certainly work faster. This big screen also enables views front and rear to be displayed, provided by new high-resolution digital cameras and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto access. There's also an improved natural voice recognition system activated by the command OK Iris, but it still isn't as intuitive as the kind of advanced intuitive voice systems you'd find in a rival BMW or Mercedes. Less obvious are the changes made to the 12.3-inch digital instrument panel, where refreshed graphics feature on displays that, as before, can be changed and personalised via a roller dial on each wheel spoke. Instinctively, you go to the right spoke switch to do this because it's nearer to the screen you're trying to change, but DS hasn't changed this for right-hand drive markets, so it's actually the roller dial on the left wheel spoke which scrolls you through dials, driving, navigation, personal and, on this E-Tense model, energy settings. These various layout options prioritise things like audio info, driver assistance features and an energy monitor. These screens sometimes combined with navigation mapping, plus you can prioritise the DS Night Vision system with its infrared display if that's been fitted as here. Otherwise, all the gloriously Louis Vuitton style touches of the original model thankfully remain. The weird revolving analogue clock from French horologists BRM that on top models like this one pirouettes out of the top of the centre of the fascia at startup. The central screen's strange serrated barrel style centre volume dial, the diamond shaped start button, the Clou de Paris guilloche finishing for the centrally mounted electric window switches, and the plumply upholstered seats, which gain unique watch strap style quilted leather on top models, a DS brand signature feature. If you're in the mood for all this design extravagance, you might also like this odd angular 4-spoke wheel which has a rim so thick that it's almost like grasping a leather trimmed wine bottle. Before perhaps realising that, a little disappointingly, it's lifted directly from a humble Citroën C4, as are the door handles and a lot of the cheap plastics that feature lower down if you go looking for them. Ergonomic oversights are remarkably few considering the stylised eccentricity on display here. The all-round visibility you get from your properly raised SUV-style driving perch, for example, is extremely good, though DS has fitted rear parking sensors across the range just to make sure. The centre-stack touchscreen could do with some proper physical buttons rather than the provided lower row of touch-sensitive switches that often leave you needing to look away from the road to check on whether you've selected the right setting. As for storage space, well, there's this simply enormous air-conditioned box between the seats with its neat, stitched, butterfly-opening double lid, illuminated interior and lift-out tray. In front of this lie two large cup holders, plus there's a further stowage slot behind the gear stick and another covered area in front of it that's intended for your phone, hence the nearby USB and 12-volt ports. The door bins are also reasonably sized, include recesses for bottles and come carpeted to stop loose items from rattling around. You get ticket clips on the sun visors, but there's no overhead compartment for your sunglasses, and the PSA era age of this design is revealed in the way that the majority of space in the glove box is taken up with a blanked off section necessary on right-hand drive models for the car's fuse box. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, DS hasn't been shy in pricing this car, but you could still easily spend just as much on a premium brand SUV that would give you a lot less rear seat space than one of these. And that's obviously a boon when it comes to situations like getting elderly relatives or child seats in and out. You're reminded again of this Gallic model's relatively generous dimensions at its price point once inside. In the backseat of similarly premium-priced C-segment crossovers like this, say the BMW X1, the Audi Q3 or the Mercedes GLA, you're always left feeling that you've paid an awful lot of money for a car that's no more spacious than a humble Astra or Peugeot 308 sized hatch. It's different in a DS7. Even for a 6-footer sitting behind quite a lanky front seat occupant, the legroom on offer should be quite sufficient. Headroom too is fine, providing you haven't got the panoramic glass roof we have here, which restricts it a little. The floor is a little high though, forcing your knees a little further upwards than they would normally be. At least though, it doesn't feature the kind of prominent centre transmission tunnel you get with many rivals, which makes fitting in a middle seat passenger a little easier than it would normally be. If there are only 2 of you, then this centre armrest can be folded down, revealing a couple of useful cup holders. Without the panoramic roof fitted, it might feel a little dark back here if it weren't for these little rear quarter-light windows. As you'd expect, there are ISOFIX child seat mounts on the 2 outer seats, along with narrow bins incorporated into the angular door cards. Plus, there are twin USB ports and a netted seat back pocket. You'll need to stretch to a very top spec model like this one to get climate controls back here to control these twin vents. Otherwise, a little storage cubby is provided in place of this climate control panel. What else? Well, the backrest reclines from 23 to 32 degrees in rake, which is nice for longer journeys. Unfortunately though, there's no sliding mechanism for the seat base, which is a pity. Finally, let's take a look at the boot. Now, a little disappointingly, you have to stretch to the priciest end of the range to get power assistance for this tailgate. Fortunately, you don't really need it because the hatch is actually quite light to lift. But once everything's raised, an impressively large 555 litre capacity is revealed. That's definitely more D segment than C segment, which means that as many as 7 carry-on suitcases will fit. Impressively, the space on offer is the same on a plug-in hybrid E-Tense model like this, as it is with the base conventionally engined diesel version. That's not the case with PHEV segment rivals, which usually take a big boot capacity drop over their conventionally engined range stablemates. What else? Well, there's a 12-volt socket on the left, lights on both sides, a bag hook and a useful elasticated strap on the right-hand cargo sidewall. And you get these corner storage areas with removable side panels that make it easier to transport wider items. There's a bit of extra space beneath the cargo area base, but in this E-Tense model, the narrow underfloor slot is only large enough for a single charge lead and certainly not enough for a space-saver spare wheel. Curiously, only the base performance line models get a ski hatch for longer items. Otherwise, you'll need to use these cargo sidewall catches and push forward the 60/40 split seat, which doesn't fold everything quite flat, but will free up 1,752 litres of total fresh air. If, like us, you're not quite sure whether this DS7 competes against C-segment premium SUVs like Audi's Q3 or BMW's X1, or D-segment premium SUVs like Audi's Q5 or BMW's X3, then the price list won't help very much because it spans both sectors, ranging from around £37,000 to nearly £63,000 at the time of this test in summer 2023. Our market, unfortunately, isn't being offered the base Bastille level of trim available in other markets. What we do get is 5 key spec levels: Performance Line Plus, Rivoli, Esprit de Voyage, or as in this case, Opera. Plus, at the time of this test, there was also a top La Première version. At the time of filming, DS was still offering its blue HDI 130 power plant at entry level, which gets you an awful lot of car for the money at a starting price, as we filmed, of around £37,000. Essentially though, this is now a £45,000 to £60,000 car, the required asking price span for this facelifted DS7 in the E-Tense plug-in hybrid petrol form that this Gallic brand would much rather you chose. Within that part of the lineup, there's another big price jump to go from the entry-level front-driven E-Tense 225 version to the E-Tense 4x4 300 variant we're trying here, which requires a £5,000 premium over the lesser derivative, and as we filmed was priced from around £52,000. We can't really see why you'd stretch to the top DS performance-fettled E-Tense 4x4 360 version, but if you must have that, prices from launch began from just under £56,000. You might find it a bit of a trek to find your nearest DS retailer. Currently, there are only 28 UK dealerships, though more are planned. At least the marque isn't just inhabiting a differently carpeted part of a Citroën showroom, as was basically the case when it first started out. And the company is talking about class-leading customer service, though it's not quite up to what you get from a comparable Genesis. Still, it's pretty close to that benchmark standard. Customers can elect to get their DS collected from home or office for servicing. They can rent cars from dealers in various ways, should a different kind of model be needed. And they can attend privileged events, things like Kew Gardens trips, Harvey Nichols shoppings, baking schools, and so on. They're also granted special access to British Formula E races. DS1, the 2020 and 2021 Formula E Championships. All of this explains why the brand is growing faster than you might think. As we said right up front, from a size point of view, it's hard to decide just what kind of mid-level SUVs this DS7 competes against, but it's priced much more comparably against slightly smaller X1 and Q3 sized rivals than, say, X3 and Q5 size ones. So for the purposes of brevity, we'll limit our comparison observations to those. The few considering the base diesel DS7 might note that its £37,000 asking price is about £2,000 higher than a BMW X1 S-Drive 18D, about £1,500 lower than a Mercedes GLA 200D, and about £4,000 lower than a comparable diesel-engined Genesis GV70. But as we said earlier, it's the E-Tense plug-in hybrid models that'll probably occupy your focus if you're at all interested in this car. The £45,000 starting budget for one of these would also get you premium PHEV mid-sized crossover models like the Mercedes GLA 250e, the Audi Q3 45 TFSIe and the Alfa Romeo Tonale PHEV. But if we were buying, we'd find it difficult to ignore the fact that as we filmed, a lower £41,000 budget would get you PHEVs of the quality of Cupra's Formentor E Hybrid or the class efficiency champion, the BMW X1 xDrive 25e. That latter BMW has the added benefit of four-wheel drive, for which, as we said earlier, you'll need the mid-level E-Tense 4x4 300 DS7 model we've been testing here. This car's £52,000 starting budget would also get you PHEV versions of the Jaguar E-Pace and the Range Rover Evoque, which are more powerful but less efficient. And virtually all the rivals I've just mentioned have less interior space than this DS, less standard equipment, and a cargo area more compromised by battery pack placement. If that's enough to convince you to take a step towards what might well for you be an unknown brand, then the deal might be sealed by the kind of strong standard equipment showing we just referenced. Is that what's on offer here? Well, let's see. All models get EAT8 8-speed auto transmission, and this revised model's freshly added DS Pixel LED Vision 3 auto headlamps with high beam assist, which have a range of up to 380 metres on high beam, up to 65 metres in town. The outer edge Pixel main beam module feature 84 LEDs in 3 rows, and lighting through the corners is altered by steering angle. You also get 3D LED tail lamps, an acoustic windscreen, keyless entry, dark tinted rear windows, power folding heated mirrors with DS puddle spotlights, and follow me home lighting that lights the way to your front door once you leave the car. As well as rear parking sensors, auto wipers, a perimetric and volumetric alarm, and cruise control with a speed limiter and speed limit recognition warning. Plus, there's a usefully extensive pack of camera safety kit which we'll cover off for you in a few moments. Inside, all DS models get a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, a frameless electrochrome rearview mirror, a stitched premium leather steering wheel, automatic bi-zone air conditioning with an odour filter, powered driver's seat lumbar support, aluminium sports pedals, and LED ambient lighting. Media connectivity is taken care of by a 12-inch HD centre screen running the DS Iris system with 3D connected navigation, natural voice recognition, a 6-speaker DAB audio system, Bluetooth connectivity, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wireless smartphone mirroring, TomTom speed cam monitoring, and over-the-air updates. All DS7 owners also get access to the My DS app. With this, you can check vehicle stats, precondition the cabin climate, and on E-Tense models, schedule charging times, see your car's current state of charge, and get an update on your approximate remaining range. All of that features across the DS7 range, and with base performance line trim, it comes with 19-inch Silverstone, black alloy wheels and black Alcantara seats with leather effects and black cabin decor. Performance Line Plus spec adds black roof rails, a 180-degree vision reversing camera, front parking sensors and a heated windscreen. Inside, Performance Line Plus variants benefit from heated, electrically adjustable front seats and a contrast-stitched steering wheel. If you don't like the whole Alcantara cabin theme of the two Performance Line models, then you'll be looking at the leather-lined Rivoli and Opera trimmed models. As we said earlier, Opera trim is what we have here. Both feature 19-inch Edinburgh diamond-cut alloy wheels or bigger 21-inch Brooklyn rims with the top 360 powertrain. Plus, chrome exterior accents and chromed roof rails. Plus inside there are massaging front seats and you get a BRM timepiece analogue clock in the centre console. Rivoli trim gets you basalt black diamond shaped Napa leather upholstery, while this Opera spec upgrades that to black or pearl grey Napa watch strap leather, complemented by art basalt leather cabin decor. Opera variants also feature DS Active Scan suspension, an electric glass panoramic sunroof, ventilated front seats, an electric tailgate with foot swipe functionality, laminated front and side rear windows, wireless charging for a smartphone, multicoloured interior lighting and two USB-C ports in the front, plus the latest DS Drive Assist semi-autonomous technology. At the time of filming, DS was also offering an Esprit de Voyage version with 19-inch diameter diamond-cut wheels and special branding. And at the top of the range, there was a flagship 360 model only La Première variant with a 14-speaker, 515-watt Focal Electra hi-fi system and a 360 vision reversing camera. On to extras and options. There's not much you can add to the base Performance Line trim apart from a powered tailgate, a reversing camera and a tow bar. On Performance Line Plus and Rivoli models though, you'll probably want to consider a wireless charging mat, the Focal Electra hi-fi system upgrade and the sunroof pack, which gives you a powered panoramic glass roof, laminated windows, extended bi-zone air conditioning with rear climate controls and, if your DS7 doesn't have it, the BRM pirouetting dashboard clock. Performance Line Plus and Rivoli models can also be optionally embellished with the DS Drive Assist pack, which gives you the brand's semi-autonomous driving system, plus adaptive cruise control with stop and go, lane positioning assist, and a 360-degree vision surround view camera setup. Those drive assist features also come included if you opt for the pricey night vision pack that uses night vision technology to identify and picture on the dash people or animals who might be about to move into your path after dark. With this Opera spec, you can add the aforementioned Focal Electra hi-fi system upgrade too. And across the range, if you avoid base trim and the 360 drivetrain, you'll be able to upgrade to larger 20-inch wheel rims. Opera and La Première models have the no-cost option of switching from a basalt black to a lighter pearl grey coloured interior. And with Rivoli and Opera models, you can swap the chromed exterior look for a DS black pack. And bear in mind that you'll almost certainly be paying DS extra for your choice of paint colour, because the only standard shade is metallic sapphire blue. We've got metallic lacquered grey here. On to safety. Now, all DS7 models come with the brand's advanced safety pack, which includes an emergency braking system, blind spot detection, lane keeping assist, and extended traffic sign recognition. Particularly worthy of note is the standard driver attention monitoring system. Now, we're used to fatigue detection these days in modern cars, but this setup's better because it analyses the driver's level of attention with two cameras. The first checks the behaviour of the car in its surroundings, and the second, positioned facing the driver, diagnoses where they are looking and their face and eyelid movement, which translates to the level of sleepiness and attention. DS says this is unprecedented in the segment. Plus, the system warns you to take a break after 2 hours of driving. If you specify a tow bar, there's trailer stability control as well. Plus, you get the brand's DS Connect box package that'll automatically alert the emergency services with your exact location if the airbags go off. There are twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus ISOFIX child seat fastenings and the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability control. Time moves on, especially amongst plug-in hybrids. Not long ago, it would have been possible to get quite enthusiastic about a PHEV model like this DS7 E-Tense, offering an EV driving range figure of over 40 miles. But the bar for this keeps changing, held in this segment at the time of this test in summer 2023 by PHEV versions of BMW's X1, which can go 55 miles between periods of battery replenishment. Still, this DS model's PHEV battery size enlargement in this facelifted form is welcome. As we told you in our driving section, up from 13 to 14.2 kilowatt hours, though only 12.9 kilowatt hours of that is actually usable. And it's allowed the battery range figure to usefully leapfrog PHEV rivals in this segment from Audi, Alfa Romeo, Cupra, Jaguar and Land Rover, all of whom still offer EV mileage figures beginning with a 3. And that makes quite a difference because it brings the potential best CO2 figure down to 26 grams per kilometre, which in turn means this model's benefit in kind tax liability goes down from what would otherwise be 11 or 12% to just 8. Or at least it does with the two E-Tense models almost all DS7 customers will choose, the front-driven 225 version, which goes 43 miles between charges, and the 4x4 300 variant we're trying here, where, despite an extra 76 kilograms of curb weight, the extra figure is almost the same, 42 miles. As with all PHEVs, the EV range has a ridiculously big impact on the official combined cycle fuel return, as you can see by the way that the rival BMW X1 PHEV's larger battery has boosted its official combined fuel reading to a heady 403.3 mpg. In a DS7 E-Tense 225 or the 4x4 300 version we're trying here, it's nothing like as good as that, but the 250 mpg figure that is quoted by DS should see your real-world returns comfortably equaling what you might previously have achieved in a good diesel engine model in this class. Which reminds us that at the time of this test, the DS brand was still offering a good diesel engine model in this class, a base version of this DS7, with the familiar Stellantis Group 1.5 litre Blue HDI 130 horsepower 4-cylinder unit. This is rated at 53.3 mpg and 144 grams per kilometre, but the 33% BIK tax figure might kick it out of touch for a lot of company folk these days. These people might also want to avoid the DS7 4x4 360 PHEV range topper, which, despite basically the same petrol drivetrain as this 4x4 300 model, manages to knock its returns back to 161.1 mpg, 40 grams per kilometre of CO2, so 12% BIK, and an EV range of 36 miles. You'll need to play your part, of course, to get anywhere near to the efficiency stats we've just quoted. With an E-Tense DS7, the car usually starts in its electric drive setting, then reverts to the hybrid mode you'll usually use. Engaging the alternative sport setting will see returns drop like a stone, nor will they be helped much if you engage the provided e-save or max e-save features, which use the engine to charge the battery as you drive. This setting able to save EV range for the last 6 or 12 miles of your trip, as you might want to do if, say, you were on a long highway journey with the last few miles to the destination likely to be urban-based. A useful energy section of the centre screen allows you to activate this feature and also gives you a graphical statistics section showing your recent efficiency efforts in miles per kilowatt hour and mpg. These results will be enhanced if you make regular use of the regenerative braking energy button on the gear stick, which, when engaged, is supposed to be able to add up to 20% to your EV driving range in urban traffic. The centre screen has an energy monitor, also replicated in the instrument cluster, so that you can see at any given time what's being driven by what. And you can also use this screen to manage your DS7 E-Tense model's charging regime. Charging time for the 4x4 models, empty to full, with a 7.4 kilowatt garage wallbox, is 1 hour and 55 minutes. Disappointingly, the base front-driven E-Tense 225 variant can only charge up to 3.7 kilowatts, so needs almost twice as long at 3 hours and 45 minutes. On all E-Tense models, charging empty to full from a domestic socket requires 6.5 hours. Of course, running costs are about a lot more than just fuel economy, CO2 readings and driving range, so what else are you going to need to know? Well, there's the usual unremarkable 3-year or 60,000 mile warranty, and there's a 12-year anti-perforation warranty and a 3-year guarantee on the paintwork. It's all pretty standard stuff. Service intervals are every year or every 20,000 miles with normal usage, or every year or 12,500 miles if the car's regularly driven in arduous conditions. DS offers various servicing plans paid for either in a lump sum or monthly, as well as fixed price repairs. Residual values are also going to be key to whole life running costs. DS7 values after the usual 3-year or 36,000 mile period are rated at 46 to 47% across the range. Choice of variant doesn't alter that much. To give you some segment perspective, that's about 10% less than you'd get from a comparable Volvo XC40 or Jaguar E-Pace. Insurance groups start at 26E for the blue HDI 130 diesel and 34 to 35E for the E-Tense 225. This E-Tense 4x4 300 variant is rated at Group 40 to 41E, and the top 4x4 360 model rates at Group 41 to 42E. Charismatic, elegant and satisfyingly rare, the DS7 does indeed bring something different to the upper class part of the mid-sized SUV segment. It's an interesting confection, this. Relatively conservative in its overall exterior shaping, but extreme and individualistic in its elegantly Parisian cabin demeanour. Will there be enough premium segment customers wanting that kind of combination? Well, it'll be interesting to see. Apparently, you'll be a target buyer if you're someone who's in tune with the latest trends, appreciates luxury and likes to express their unique personality. That sounds good in the brochure. But since this model's original launch, DS has, in reality, struggled to communicate that Gallic vibe to a segment slavishly committed to Teutonic design and a class in which aspiring premium brands have traditionally struggled. This updated model is unlikely to have much more of an impact, but for those prepared to give it a chance, the improvements made here could be significant. It's sharper to look at and more media savvy, plus there's the widest choice of PHEV powertrains in the segment. We continue to wish that the car would ride as fluently as a DS model should. Even with the active scan suspension system fitted, it doesn't flow over uneven tarmac as you might hope it would. Yet it isn't particularly sporty to drive either. Despite that though, we do like this DS7 because it feels special, or at least it will, for the right kind of buyer. That customer will love the painstaking attention that's been paid to almost every detail of this design. And in some respects, the execution isn't perfect. But then, as we've remarked before, when reviewing this boutique French maker's products and considering its competitors, something rather soulless and clinical about perfection. The DS brand is about a different spirit, a different way to go. Other marques have promised that. This car, though, actually delivers it.